We're live. Exciting stuff. All righty. It's the 28th, right? It's May 28th.
All day.
It is.
For the entire day. All right. Let's get the show on the road, huh?
Let's do it.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's Friday, May 28th, 2021. Today, we've got a rumor extravaganza with a side helping of actual news because this is the iMore show. Joining me as always is iMore contributor Karen Freeman. Hey, Karen.
Hello.
And joining us today, once again, is iMore news writer Stephen Warwick. Hey, Stephen.
Hello.
All right. So let's dive into it. We're going to start with the actual confirmed, truly happening news. And it's sort of a follow-up on news from last week so last week, Apple announced Apple Music lossless audio and Dolby Atmos audio coming to Apple Music some point in June. We still don't have an exact date. But Stephen, there have been some developments on that front since even like a few hours after we spoke last week.
Yeah, so it didn't take long at all. We'd heard previously rumors, unconfirmed from John Prosser, that Apple was maybe going to flick a switch down the line for like the Airpods and stuff for wireless lossless audio. But in the meantime, we found out that Apple is definitely bringing lossless to the HomePod and the HomePod Mini, which is great news because that was one of the omissions where everybody was like, well, that's a bit strange. Like, you've got this great new audio feature, but none of your products seem to work with it. HomePod Mini were two of those devices. Were like, why is this not a thing? And Apple fairly shortly on confirmed that would be a thing. So yeah, spatial audio, Dolby Atmos, rather lossless audio, coming to the HomePod further down the line, which is good. It just says future software update. So as with kind of all of this, we don't know when that will be. We're expecting a lot of software at WWDC, so
yes, a lot of software. Traditionally, a lot of software at WWDC.
All the software.
Every software.
Yeah, I expect this issue to be specifically addressed at WWDC this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
which makes you wonder why. Sorry to cut you off, Joe. Makes you wonder why they didn't hold on to it. I do get what John Prosser said about the competition aspect and what they did with AirTags and opening up Find My to third parties before their own product. But it has been a fairly torrid kind of couple of weeks in terms of we've announced this feature, but nobody quite seems to understand what's going on, and there's a few mixed messages, and maybe it would have been better to hang on to it. And if WWDC is the appointed time for everything to change and activate that needs to be done, why not just wait and announce it?
I agree. It was weird.
The whole structure of the announcement has seemed odd to me. Like they didn't have half the story ready. They don't have the slides in the deck.
Right.
Yes.
That'll come at WWDC. The idea that I've seen floated, and it's because of a lot because of John Prosser's report on it, is that we might see an AirPlay 3 announcement at WWDC.
You forget, don't you, that there's iterations of AirPlay, that it's not just a thing.
Yeah, and it is like, it was fairly recently that AirPlay got multi-room audio support, and that these things change over time. But I feel like this would be a shorter I feel like this has been a shorter generation, if indeed we are getting an AirPlay 3 at WWDC. The generation of 2 to 3 is shorter than the generation of 1 to 2. So yeah, and maybe this is a mobile focused version of AirPlay, like headphone focused.
I just wonder if Apple introduced the whole lossless audio thing as like a purposeful sort of misdirect to purposely bring on confusion and chatter and kind of like if you're planning a surprise party for somebody's birthday, you like purposely act like you've completely forgotten about the fact that their birthday is coming, and to like get them really upset. And so when the actual surprise happens, they're like, oh, we remembered all along, and they're all excited. Mm-hmm. Kind of the same idea. Maybe Apple's trying to like mess with us in order to get us really excited.
It has really excited a lot of buzz, to be fair. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I did think. I thought the HomePod omission from this whole discussion originally was from the whole lossless discussion was strange. Like of all products, even though it's been discontinued, the original HomePod is one I did expect to get lossless audio.
Especially because it doesn't have a, some of the limitations are like, oh, well, Bluetooth can't support lossless. Maybe Wi-Fi can, but the battery
Wi-Fi.
drained.
It's a Wi-Fi speaker.
It's a Wi-Fi, and it's plugged into
without
the wall.
a battery.
Come on.
But the question is, why discontinue something? The one thing that it just doesn't make any sense.
This is
unless
a
they're
very
coming out
strange
with
thing.
something new,
And
new and better.
We talked about this a bit last week with the whole eARC situation on the new Apple TV. That is a feature that is only for the original HomePod.
Yeah.
Steven, you went out and you bought a second one, right?
Yeah, so on the show last week, if you listened, I explained like the whole saga of, we nearly got a TV the day early, and then I literally had it in my hand in the store, and they were like, "You can't buy this until tomorrow." I know, but you told me I could. That's why I'm here. So I went home, and then Apple decided to send my TV on the appointed day, and early, in fact. And so we set it up, plugged it in, and we had the old Apple. It's the Apple TV HD, not the 4K one, but we've never used it with the HomePod. We have a sound bar connected to our TV, and we only use our HomePod for music. And I was like, "Oh, well, it's here." And it was one of the things that I was going to test for my review, which is now live on iMore.com. And I plugged it in, and me and my wife, we sat for 10 minutes, and this was just one speaker, so in mono, and we were like, "This is absolutely electric." And within about 15 minutes of plugging the Apple TV in and then connecting it to the HomePod, we had resolved to buy another one. We now have 2 HomePods. Yeah, we got a good deal, thankfully, but. As a side note, our HomePod was made in March. The week commencing March the 5th, 2018. According to the serial number.
That's still like
production
first run.
Yeah.
That's still the initial batch.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, does kind of go to show why it was discontinued in the first place. But part of that is, I think, and you see this in some places, like I think you saw this with AirTag, but Apple really if they want to succeed in these sorts of markets that are already saturated, like high-end headphones are already saturated, Apple, you do need to be sort of aggressive on price, even if you perceive the quality. Apple is a company that needs someone in it to tell them to just suck it up and do the thing. Sometimes
just take the hit.
Make a 50% profit instead of a 78% profit for once. Whatever, Apple.
Even if it was a loss leader, like there must be, like everybody.
Well, that's something I don't think Apple would ever want to do.
Apple, is it?
Not on hardware products.
No.
But I feel like a replacement big HomePod will eventually come. I just don't know that it's ready, and I don't know how much. I feel like the cancellation was in part motivated by the hardware that the HomePod runs, which I think is still an A8 system on a chip, which is aged by Apple standards.
To me, it would have made more sense just to do like a tiny iterative update of the HomePod just to hold us over until the next big thing. It just is odd that they just discontinued it.
Which feels like what they did with the Apple TV. But I think price is still a concern with the HomePod, the original HomePod anyway. So
even discontinued, it's still wildly expensive.
And what is it, $300?
I would, £279, so $300. I think sounds about right. Which it was obviously cheaper than it was when it started, but still, like, God, it's quite a misunderstood product as well. A lot of people thought of it as like a smart home hub that also plays music, when really it is a premium voice controlled speaker that also happens to be
a smart home hub.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you compare it to other premium smart speakers, I think it excels. It's the best sound like I've ever heard out of a speaker, apart from like the DeViolet Phantom, which is like $2,000 of Tron like motorbike hardware to put in your living room or whatever. So,
And I mean, look at they now have that dedicated and framed as home hub device in the HomePod Mini.
exactly.
That's how they marketed it when it came out.
No, that's very true. So,
yeah.
I know we wanted to start with the real news, but there was talk of a new HomePod today. If you'd like to pivot.
Yeah, let's actually talk about that. I had missed this.
So this is from Bloomberg. So we got a bit of a dump about lots of new AirPods coming up, and in there was a throwaway from Mark Gurman about this is stuff he's previously reported on that Apple is reportedly working on a HomePod that is also has a display and is like a HomePod speaker, Apple TV, all in one kind of home entertainment extravaganza. And he says that Apple's still working on this, which is
it's the TV set, like it's a TV set that has HomePod guts.
It wouldn't be like a big TV that you'd put in your. It would be a very small like Echo Show. Is that the?
Yeah, like an Echo Show or a Nest
like that.
Home or something.
So you would still hook it up to a TV set?
Yeah, it would be something you put in your kitchen to watch recipes while you were cooking, or like a digital photo frame, or like if you wanted to like call a family member or something, rather than like the TV that you'd sit in front of to watch a movie or something. Yeah.
Okay. So more like a souped up iPad.
Yeah.
You can't really take anywhere.
No.
Right. Like a non-portable. Yeah, I gotcha.
So Apple does have seemingly more HomePods in the pipeline, but they're not conventional HomePods when we think of, it's just a premium speaker. It's really a whole new type of.
Yeah, but that's still a couple years out, right?
Yeah, it sounds like it's very, very early stages. And again, one of those things that could just sort of be pulled or scrapped at a moment's notice. So who knows?
Although when you, and I think we've spoken about this in relation to the supposed soundbar HomePod Apple TV combo that is also rumored to have a FaceTime camera in it, but no screen.
Yeah.
That, you look at a feature on the new iPad Pro, like Center Stage.
Yep.
That seems even more practical for an Echo Show like device or that Apple TV HomePod combo than it does for a device that you can just generally move around anyway if you want, like an iPad.
Yeah,
I feel like Center Stage is like the least talked about feature, but I think it's really cool.
It's very. I mean, I won't be able to have a hands-on with it for another few hours because my iPod is out for delivery. But it does seem to be like the most technically impressive software feature. Certainly, maybe the Liquid Retina XDR display on the 12.9 inch is the actual, it's the hardware feature that's most impressive.
Yeah.
But
we know it's Center Stage.
Center Stage, automatically panning and cropping, and just finding faces and things like that. That's great.
I would really like to see that in action because I feel like when I'm using my iPad for talking on the phone with somebody, the camera's off to the side. So it's very awkward because I'm never looking at the camera if I'm looking at the person. So I'm like, it's like they're seeing the side of my face basically. So I'm curious how that'll work with Center Stage.
A few iOS iterations ago where they had that, they did that AR thing with FaceTime where they used AR to make it look like you were looking at the person you were talking to, and it freaked people out.
No, I don't remember that.
Remember this?
No,
yeah, it was something that.
Well, what app was it in? An app?
I want to say this was in like iOS. I want to say it was as far back as like iOS 10 or something like that. 4 or 5 years ago now, but. It was in, Stephen Perry in the comments, the creepy eyes feature. So basically, what Apple would do,
it's called eye contact. It's in the FaceTime settings of.
Is it still there?
I have it something that's you need iOS 14.
Okay, but it originally showed up. I want to say like several years ago,
attention correction in iOS 13 in a beta. That's what it was. Yeah, but the attention correction.
Is it still there now?
Yep, still use it. Yep.
Yeah, but it's not something that's on by default because it did freak people out. So what it does is it uses AR to like almost computerize your eyes.
Oh, that
and
is
move them. So
creepy.
yeah, it's and make it look like you're looking at the person instead of like at the camera or at the screen.
I saw a brief example photo when I looked up that information, and it was terrifying. Yeah, so
It was it was weird, but what was really strange to me is that it actually worked really well. Like it didn't look like you had cartoon eyes, which you might almost expect from a feature like that. It did work well. It's just very strange.
I actually have it. I just checked my phone. I actually have it toggled on. I don't remember ever touching it. It literally I totally missed this somehow.
The last person you FaceTime didn't tell you, but they were really freaked out.
Yeah, come to think of it, I don't use my phone for FaceTime that often.
It's like what kind of person is constantly looking at the camera? He says, looking at the camera.
Somebody that's not vain and looking at themselves the whole time.
Yes. Well, as humans, we try to look at the people that we're talking to. Well,
I know.
Try to look at the people we're
I know. I'm teasing.
Some of us don't. Also, when we're in person, which is why we don't go out in person a lot.
Yeah, I feel like after like a year plus of Zoom only, people are going to forget how to.
I think they have already forgotten. I think that actually didn't take long. We're social creatures, but I think we're bad at it. So yeah, that is HomePod stuff, and an interesting HomePod rumor. I hadn't heard the latest from Grimmin on that, but let's see here. It was a big week. So yeah,
week as well. It feels like 10 minutes ago I was on the iMore show last week. It's just evaporated. I don't know.
Yeah, and then next week is the week before WWDC. We've got just over a week until the conference, and Apple this week published its sort of official, still kind of hidden schedule, because obviously once the keynote's over, there are going to be a lot of newly named sessions for all of the new stuff that developers are going to be able to get their hands on. Yes. But yeah, the 7th, June 7th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. That is officially when the keynote's going to be. Of course, we could have guessed that because that's the day of the conference. It always is.
Yeah. And then there's the State of the Union platform address in the afternoon, isn't there?
The real nerdy keynote, as I always consider it. That is the one where Craig Federighi got his start in keynotes, as I think of it. It's weird to look back at that. Actually, I was watching not too long ago. I was watching an older platform State of the Union, because that's just who I am and how I live my life. And Craig Federighi, Air Force One himself, presented during that, because that's what he used to do before he was head of software, head of iOS and Mac software. He presented at things like the State of the Union, and the difference between his early appearances on the sort of main stage at Apple events, where he was, pretty notably nervous and a little shaky, versus when he was in front of like his people, programmers, developers, it was stark. And he's become much more that more confident presentation personality has now translated itself into the more public presentations, and it's very, very interesting to watch.
But did he have the hair in the early?
He did have the hair. The hair has always been
consistent,
a part of him. He is the hair has always been him, and he has always been the hair.
And of course now it's the remote presentation, so there's like another dimension of like audience engagement that everybody has to think about.
And I think they hit it out of the park last year with the remote WWDC keynote.
Yeah.
The first one out, they just knocked it out of the park, and I can't imagine they've gotten worse.
Well, I mean, especially because they didn't have very long to think about it. It was March, I think, they announced the remote WW. Oh, maybe it was April. It was not very long. I don't
think in March anybody realized what this was going to be.
So they would have had to, scrap their WWDC plans and change it. I assume that probably WWDC 20 finished, and as soon as they started preparing for 21, they said, look, we're just going remote again. And so they've had an entire year to prep a remote conference, which is obviously, a lot more time to work with and kind of smooth everything out. So if anything, I think this year should hopefully yield an even better.
I mean, I don't know what they could do better. I thought it was super smooth and fast paced and slick and fun.
And yet there was a lot to talk about, like in the iOS section. Remember, we got so much. We got widgets, we got app library, we got the ability to hide app pages, we got car key. There was a lot to talk about in iOS 14. I wonder, though, we haven't heard a lot. We haven't heard too much about it. We have heard some now about iOS 15. We don't really have a good picture yet of what that's going to look like.
It sounds like basically last year, someone 9to5Mac found like a copy of iOS 14 like in a CD under a bush somewhere and just leaked the entire we knew basically everything about iOS 14 before it happened, and this year it has been very, very limited. Maybe that just means it'll stink. Maybe Apple just isn't doing very much, and we've heard everything there is to.
So what have we heard? We've heard earlier this week we heard about dark mode tweaks, which I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean.
Some sort of calorie tracking, like a kind of a MyFitnessPal.
I would assume that a lot of Apple's tracking, like built-in tracking, it's fairly basic.
Yeah,
relying on third-party apps to offer a more robust experience, like sleep tracking.
Right.
Yeah. Notification preferences. This is from Mark Gurman earlier this week.
Yeah, and home screens.
Yes,
home screens are going to be different.
Changes, exactly. Yeah.
That is now. Is the home screen? Are home screen changes coming for iOS, or are we thinking that's more of an iPad OS feature?
I think both.
Yeah, it might be bigger on iPadOS though, because I think I know a lot of people, especially with like the widgets and stuff, people are really hands up, really wanting to unlock the power of the iPad with more widgets on the home screen, not just in that one column down there.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of wasted potential with that huge screen.
Yeah,
be doing much more with it and have functional widgets.
Probably just have an entire page of widgets, I'm guessing.
My entire first page. That's what, if this comes to pass, just widgets all the way down that first page.
Yeah, imagine being able to have an entire screen of widgets where you can do things inside all of the widgets without opening the app.
And I would love custom iPad sizes for widgets. So right now, on the iPad in the sidebar, as I still call it, the Today view or whatever, on the left-hand side of the home screen, you still are limited to the iPhone sizes of widgets, so small, medium, large. I would love to see widgets that are more expansive, longer, taller.
Yeah, or at least
one widget for the entire screen.
At least be able to have an entire screen.
Yeah, like a sports ticker, like across, or like the stocks or something like.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Just to have that flexibility, but even to be able to have like 4 widgets that take up the entire screen, or 16, or just to be able to. Yeah, I like the idea of having a ticker for people who like to kind of follow the sports scores all day, or you could have like a news ticker going all the way across, or like you said, stocks.
I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about it a lot this week in particular. I don't know why this week in particular, but I would love instead of having to pull down the control center on my iPad to activate HomeKit stuff like lights. I would love if that was just a widget on the home screen and I can just tap a button without having to do anything extra.
I think the idea is we just want to be able to have more control.
More control.
The only thing with the iPad, as Stephen notes in the chat, is because you've got the 2 orientations, you go from landscape to portrait and back quite often with the iPad.
That does mean there would be some constraints.
Yeah. Fudge the widgets a little bit.
I think so. Last year, like soon after iPad OS 14 launched, Parker Ortolani, who was a designer at, I want to say BuzzFeed, and then he also works for he does some work for 9to5Mac, I think, too. He does a lot of concepts, and he made a concept for iPad OS 15 that I really liked. There's some disagreements I had with the design philosophy, but overall I really liked it. And the idea was that it was sort of a modular home screen with widgets and apps sort of mixed together, kind of like you've got on the iPhone now, but less regimented than the iPad currently is. And the thing about this design is it was built to be used both in portrait and landscape orientation. And I would imagine the designers at Apple, having thought about this collectively, more than one designer outside of Apple, may probably taken that into account. At least one would hope. Right now, the widget situation in portrait mode on iPad is non-existent.
Yeah.
So one hopes.
Seems like a lost opportunity there. So hopefully you'll get some.
Yeah.
I think I am mostly excited for iPad OS this year. You know, we got the news today about iPad OS, or the new iPad Pro, that developers are currently restricted to 5 gigabytes of RAM.
Yeah.
This is a weird one.
We think it's 5 gig. We know they're restricted. Basically, Procreate, who have this amazing illustration app for iPad OS, they came out with a new M1 update, and somebody commented and said, like, oh, like, I've got the 16 gig of RAM M1 iPad Pro. Like, I'm a bit disappointed. I thought there'd be more layers, more options and stuff like that. And Procreate came back and said, well, unfortunately, we are restricted to the same, our access, rather, is restricted to the same amount of RAM across the iPad Pro models, regardless of 8 gig and 16 gig. And some testing in their forums, somebody pointed out that they reckon it's 5 gig of RAM. So yeah, you've got a lot of folk with the 16 gig. Joe's yours the 16 gig? Did you go?
Mine's the
16 gig iPad Pro. But any one single app that you use for that isn't going to be able to currently take advantage of that. Now, it's not a huge deal. Like, I mean, but iPad OS has always limited how much RAM any particular app can use. I think, in fact, it might even have been 5 gig more recently, but obviously the previous iPad Pro, I want to say, was like, one of them was like 6 gig of RAM. So it's like, you can have the 5 gig, we need 1. Whereas now that portion is much more pronounced because it's 5 gig out of a possible 16 gig. And you're like, well, what's all this 11 gig of
3 to 11 gigs.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've got...
It's keeping literally everything in memory, so it never has to refresh.
Pretty much, yeah. You do need the RAM for, obviously, multitasking, split view if you use it, and the iOS running in the background. But it does seem like there is a good opportunity, and I would assume something coming with iPadOS 15, where developers will be able to unlock more of that. Yeah,
especially if we really want to see pro apps on the
Otherwise,
iPad.
Why would there be 16 gig of RAM if you had an app that could never use it? So certainly you won't have an app that needs or can use the 16 gig, like I said, because you'll have to reserve some of it, as you do with any operating system, memory, hard drives, all that.
You have to do that on the Mac.
Yeah, exactly. But it seems like we need more, I think. So hopefully soon we'll. I don't know if Procreate know anything that we don't, but Procreate did say as soon as we have access to more, we'll pass it on to you. So Procreate obviously are hoping that this is something in the pipeline where Apple's going to say.
And
then again, could it? What could it be? Because unless you could create an app that was different for the 8 gig as opposed to the 16 gig, is it limited by the 8 gig?
Well, it scales
anyway.
It would scale. Yeah. As long as Apple were to allow apps built with the new, let's say, iPadOS 15 SDK to scale based on RAM configuration, then it really doesn't matter, and then you can have all the layers you want in Procreate. Like real adult computer layers, as I would say. Yeah, it's an interesting. Let me put it to you this way. I the way I phrased it this morning is, it is currently disappointing. I don't expect it to remain that way.
No, I would imagine they'll address it at WWDC.
Yeah, along with AirPlay 3 or
lossless audio.
It feels like we've been prepped for the other halves of things.
Yeah.
For this WWDC, like we've got the iPad, we've got the lossless audio stuff. The other thing I wanted to talk about, because we didn't talk about it last week, it was in the news last week because that's when Apple announced it, but we do have a very, very slight sneak peek of some design elements of iOS 15 already. And at least so we think, because Apple announced their new accessibility features that are coming for World Accessibility Day. Is it Global
Oh,
Accessibility
yeah.
Day? And so there's some really the Apple Watch stuff for that seems really
Oh
cool.
yeah, where you like if you
You can
squeeze your fingers together, well, it would
the base. I think the default confirm gesture is two squeezes of your fist, and then you can like make a ring with your thumb and forefinger, and use it and like move your watch around a little and like use it as a cursor. It's weird.
it's
I wouldn't.
very cool.
It is cool. I wouldn't be. I actually was thinking about this. I wouldn't be surprised if this fall, or maybe push it off to next year, with the Series 8 watch. But if the Series 7 watch, it's rumored to get like blood glucose monitoring. I also wouldn't be surprised if there was some kind of, it's called myoelectric sensor. So
Mhm.
myoelectric sensors, they sense muscle movement through
Yeah.
electrical impulses in the skin.
Mhm.
I mean, it almost sounds like the technology that they use in artificial hands, like robotic
Mhm.
hands.
Yeah, no, I imagine it's similar. At least for Apple, it would seem like, well, right now it's mostly on the software and like accelerometer, gyroscope level.
Yeah,
But
and although it's created for accessibility, I mean, certainly anybody could use it, and it could be really cool. You just depending on what your job is, you have to be careful. Like if you're a music conductor, or if you're just one of these people that likes to talk with their hands a lot.
yeah,
Could be great for workouts as well.
the thing for me that we always, I think, need to remind ourselves about how Apple approaches accessibility is it's making technology more accessible for everyone, regardless of their needs. So
Stephen in the comments had a funny comment. I could see it now. Someone is going to be fist pumping at a sporting event as they cheer on their team, and in the process, Apple paid for beers for the whole stadium.
we support it.
Yep,
we are on that. We're on that. But yeah, the way Apple approaches accessibility is it makes their technology better for everyone. Like, I don't have a particular physical need to use the powerful voice control features on my Mac or my iPhone. That doesn't mean I haven't, because they're very impressive, and in a lot of ways they improve the Mac experience overall.
It's the same as back tap on the iPhone, isn't it, as well?
Exactly. No, that's been amazing. I have the double tap set for Notification Center and the triple tap set for Control Center, and I never need to reach up to the top of my iPhone.
Yeah,
my giant 6.1-inch iPhone.
So have you given up on the Mini then?
I haven't given up on the Mini. It's just that I haven't sat down to transfer over my stuff yet. So it's less. It's less used right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So let's really dive into some of these rumors. We'll start with let's see. What do we want to start with? Let's start with the MacBook Pro.
Ooh.
Stephen, we heard a lot about the MacBook Pro this week. Why don't we start about when we think it might be coming?
So we'd heard previously, like maybe the second half of the year, maybe like the middle of the year. John Prosser now says that we're going to get a new MacBook Pro at WWDC. Basically, sort of juxtaposing, he was like, do you remember how last year at WWDC there was no hardware? And then, he says he can confirm that there is a MacBook Pro. Well, he says can confirm MacBook Pro is coming. So I don't know how many that means. We were expecting 2. A new 16-inch and like a new 14-inch would be a new size in new Apple Silicon. I think a 10-core Apple Silicon chip, 64 gig of RAM, 32 graphics cores. So with any luck, WWDC might also be a hardware release as well as all the software that we're getting, which is, I'm pumped.
If that's true, that's gonna be a packed event.
I feel like every year we're like, oh, we're going to get hardware at WWDC this year, and we never do.
Well, I thought last year was there is definitely no. We thought there might be, and I wonder if the plans changed because of the pandemic and going remote and stuff. Because it eventually transpired not too long before the event, like no hardware at WWDC was the message.
Apple like leaked that. Yeah, wasn't there a whole thing where it was in like Bloomberg and Wall Street Journal and like a bunch of places where Apple would like actually like officially leak information to say that don't expect hardware.
Yeah, I think I
like almost 11th hour.
yeah. I thought that was one of the autumn events for some reason, but now you're saying it, it's ringing a bell.
Yeah, the MacBook Pro maybe coming at WWDC. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw both sizes.
Yeah, this seems like a pairing. Really,
well,
doesn't
Apple's
it?
really looking to put an M2 in one of them and holding out then. But yeah, I think M1X seems likely.
It seems so soon after they just released the
It's
MacBook
not-
Pro 13-inch M1.
But this isn't to replace that machine, so it would go alongside these are like the.
It just seems odd to have a 13 and a 14-inch.
The
Yeah.
13
at
inch
the
is
same time.
more. The 13 inches seems like it would be more. Okay, so I can envision the basic framing of this. The 13-inch MacBook Pro would be the sort of higher end consumer portable. So it's the portable with fans. If you're like not quite prosumer, but you do more than just surf the web and email, like you do edit video and things like that, then that's a computer for you. The 14-inch is the higher end, more portable, and then the 16-inch is just that is the beefy boy.
And this is the Pro's Pro, because we're expecting like the touch bar is going to disappear. The SD card slot is coming back. There might be an HDMI port, so they're looking towards that kind of peripheral connectivity as well. Although Renee made an interesting point about that, which is, are you not hamstringing yourself because you can't convert like an HDMI port to like USB-C and a dongle or whatever, but you can dongle USB-C out to HDMI or an SD card, and all Pros need dongles. So I think Renee was kind of saying that more USB-C is better.
Yeah,
but...
and they needed that in the 2015 and prior era too, before the most recent iteration of the MacBook Pro.
Yeah, I still can't get past the 13 and 14-inch. I can't remember Apple ever having two MacBook Pros sold alongside each other that were 1 inch apart. Like when 15 went to 16, it was basically making bezels smaller, and the 16 replaced the 15.
I mean, it is feasible the 14 could replace the 13, apart from the fact that, kind of like you said, the 13 has only been out for 8 months.
It hasn't been a year.
I think instead of having the confusion, so before the M1 era, before the Apple Silicon era, you had two 13-inch MacBook Pros, one that was sort of lower end, one that was higher end. Still both paled in comparison to the larger 15 and then 16-inch. And I think that having just the three sizes, 13, 14, and 15, eliminates some of that confusion. 13-inch, it's the best sort of consumer grade one you can get, and then 14 and 16 are your pro grade machines.
It sounds silly, but like the Pro is almost like the top spec MacBook Air.
Yeah, in a way, it's like a MacBook Air. It's like a MacBook Air, but it still has the fans.
Yeah, that's how I'd explain it to a customer, probably, if I went to Apple. Still, but you're right. It does sound like if all the Macs that we think are coming down the line are coming down the line, then the lineup could start to get a bit chock-a-block, and we might have to.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if in a like an M2 or maybe next year with an M3 revision that 13-inch MacBook Pro gets a new chassis and physically shrinks without the screen actually shrinking.
Well, that's another thing, is we're expecting these new MacBook Pros to be like a design overhaul, so it'll have the Liquid Retina display, the XDR, a squarer chassis. Colors, potentially, that's another rumored feature John Prosser has hinted at, are colors, like not maybe the same as the Mac Pro, but it's the iMac, sorry, but the same sort of vibe. Maybe like, I wonder if it could be like the iPad Air lineup as opposed to like the iMac.
Now, Stephen, I was under the impression that those colors would be for a redesigned MacBook Air.
I'm sure it was a Pro. I want to say, I might have to check the tape and eat my words there, but I am.
That design, or that Mac that he did he leaked on his show a week or two ago. That he said he seemed to be under the impression that was an Air. with all of the different colors.
So,
Yeah.
So this is the render certainly was looked like an Air. John's report was, and because I noted this in my article, John didn't give any indication as to what kind of MacBook it might be. So we're both wrong.
I see. Yeah, we're both fools.
We both stink.
But yeah, I would love to see. Don't get me wrong. I would definitely love to see more colors in the Pro line.
But it does seem like an Air.
It's not the Apple thing. Yeah.
That is not the Apple way.
Although I thought Apple would never make an orange iMac again, and here
we are. Orange and yellow and blue and green.
I have to say, I really didn't like the iMac when it was released. Like the design, I hated it, and I thought a lot of the colors were very garish. I saw one in person the other day when I tried to heist the Apple TV a day early, and it was fantastic. Like it is so nice in person, and it's so thin, and like all of it is brilliant, and the material of like the chin as well. Like, and I really like it. I don't know if I still think a lot of the colors are too much, but it was a blue one that I saw, and I really liked it.
I gotta say, and I didn't realize that this was the situation with the iMac, but these rumors of the recent rumor of the Mac Mini, the MacBook rumor from a couple weeks ago, they have these new feet that they're talking about on Apple's new Macs, where they're just these long strips of like silicon or whatever. And I feel like that's such an odd thing to change. But at the same time, I say this, and the feet on my current MacBook Pro have they've just fallen off
to dust. Yeah.
And it's only a couple of, it's like one of them in particular.
So your Mac,
so it tips. It wiggles now on a desk. So maybe this helps prevent that.
Yeah, I don't think that looks odd. The silicone strips on the bottom. It makes sense. It's more stable that way.
It does make sense. It just it is such a stark change from the feet that we're used to, I think.
I mean, you would literally never see it.
Why would see it?
It just
not on the iMac, not on the iMac, not on the Mac Mini. It's like you just know that they're there. Speaking about the Mac Mini, we now have a rumored look at what's coming for that.
I'm a big fan of this, by the way. I really,
I think it looks great.
The color so much. I prefer the darker Mac Mini.
I like it.
I like the gray.
I have the space gray Mac Mini from a couple years ago, and it's nice. But I'm waiting for Apple to make like fully like black computers again. That's what I want.
D-brand. Sponsor us.
Sponsor us, but I don't want to put a skin on my computer.
Well, they're not going to sponsor us now, Joe. Come on.
That's for other people. That's not my deal. So Karen, you like the look of this Mac Mini?
I do. I like lighter colors.
Would you get one, or are you more of a you want a MacBook?
I have worked on a laptop as far back as I can remember.
Yeah. So you would say, of all of the potential computers that Apple is going to release in the next, say, 6 months, the MacBook Pro is more your speed than the Mac Mini.
Yes. I have bought a number of middle of the road MacBook Pros over the years. That's kind of my jam.
Are you excited about the potential of returning ports, like an HDMI port or an SD card reader? Or have you fully adapted to the USB-C?
I have adapted to using USB. I can't. I mean, I use an HDMI once in a blue moon. Same thing with SD, but I have the hub that has those things in it, so I don't feel like I really need it.
So, what sort of computer are you on now? Like, is it a 13-inch? Is it a 16-inch?
I'm on a 13-inch MacBook Pro. It's 2 or 3 years old. 2 years old, I think.
And so, if you had the option between this 13, the current 13, and then currently mythical 14 and 16-inch computers, do you think you'd stick with that 13-inch computer, or would you go for a little extra power and a little extra screen space of a 14-inch?
I think, assuming that the computer itself is not a lot bigger, because
Mhm.
I love to travel and I bring my laptop with me so I can work. And if the 14 inches pretty much just as portable as the 13 inch, I would probably go for the 14.
Well, that was
Yeah.
the great thing about the 16-inch, wasn't it? It was a lot more MacBook for not that much extra
Right.
kind of chassis.
Exactly. That's why I feel like the 14 should replace the 13.
Hmm.
It should be like that.
Yeah.
Maybe it will. I mean, Apple could just be like, "Hey, MacBook Pro 13-inch, it was fun. M1,
Thanks.
8 months, we're done. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for holding.
There was a MacBook Pro that they did that with
Thanks for
a few
playing."
years
Yeah.
ago. Where
There was an iPad Pro as well. They did.
yeah,
Well,
but that's
not
what I
iPad
mean. Also
Pro.
thinking the
Not an
iPad.
iPad
Sorry,
Pro,
an
an
iPad.
It was
iPad.
a regular iPad.
iPads, yeah.
So it was the I know because I had this iPad.
So did I.
iPad the
It's
iPad.
like, wait a
3.
minute, I haven't even had this a year yet. How is it outdated already?
Yeah, the iPad 3 was the
That's
last
the one.
iPad with Lightning, and then the iPad 4 came out. So
Yeah.
the iPad 3 was, I think, the first. Yeah, it was the first iPad with a Retina display,
Hmm.
and it had, I want to say, it had 4G networking. No, it still had 3G networking, and then I think 4G came with the 4 like a few months later because it's the same year as the iPhone 5, unless I'm misremembering it, but I'm not.
I don't know how you remember those kinds of details.
Because my brain
I just
is
remember how
wired that
mad
way.
I was when my less than year old iPad was already old news.
What was it? 6, 7 months later, Karen, the
Yeah.
iPad 4 comes out and it has a Lightning port, first of all. So it's on the, this was the same. This was the same year as the iPhone 5 because the iPhone 5 was the first iPhone with a Lightning port.
Maybe I had this iPad.
And so the iPad 3 was the last iPad with a 30-pin dock connector. And it ran terribly. It was maybe the worst Apple product I've owned.
I liked mine. I
box.
didn't have any problems with it. It
See,
did everything I needed it to do, but I'm not quite the power user you are on the iPad.
So it was certainly the time where I feel like I was most in with the people complaining about Apple products. Like sometimes when people complain about a software update, like, look at iOS 13 almost 2 years ago now. Like I didn't have quite as many of the problems that people did with iOS 13, but with the iPad 3, I fell more into that category. So like it ran slowly, it got hot really quickly, and then the iPad 4 came out and it had a freaking Lightning port. So when the iPad Air eventually came out like a year later, of course I jumped ship to that real quick. Same size, same screen size, much smaller iPad. But yeah, it was for a lot of people, including myself, it was a messy product. And
yeah, I think I did manage to pass it off to one of my kids pretty soon after that.
I think I got the iPad 4, and then it wasn't that quick. But after that, the iPad Air came out because I distinctly remember having my iPad 4 and being able to sell it for nearly all of what I paid for it, and upgrading to the iPad Air at almost no cost. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder about the iPad Air. Actually, it's less the iPad Air. I wonder more about the iPad Mini because we've gotten Air updates, we've gotten Pro updates. We even got a regular iPad update back in the fall.
Yeah.
But the iPad Mini hasn't been updated since 2019. It's been 2 years now, and I wonder, is that coming? And if
I don't know.
is,
and even weirder, all of the iPad Minis updates have been teeny.
Yeah. So the question I have about the iPad Mini, like my biggest question is not actually regarding the design, but regarding its parity with the iPad Air, because since the iPad Air came out, which I think the iPad Air came out after the first iPad Mini, but since the Air came out, the Air and the Mini have had spec parity. They've run the same chips. They've had the same memory options. The only difference are the screen size and the battery, because obviously those are the things that are different about those. The Mini is Mini. So I wonder, even if there's not a redesign, if it's just if it is more of a spec bump, does the iPad Mini get, say, the A14?
I'm totally for me, like the only thing that needs to change the iPad Mini and the iPad design, because that Touch ID chin forehead design next
You're
to
over
the
it.
iPad Air, it
Yeah.
looks so dated and old.
I think that iPad Mini should look exactly like the iPad Air, but smaller.
It's like
Just
it would
tiny.
kind of be like what Joe said, because at one time Joe's right that they were essentially not the same product, but it was like the iPhone, like the 10s and the 10s Max, right? It was literally, do you
Yeah.
want the big one or do you want the small one? Whereas now they are worlds apart. They're two, I assume, totally different products with two different user bases and stuff. But yeah, for me, the only thing is, I wonder if it's like the iPhone SE, in which there's a big audience that still wants the fingerprint scanner, except that the iPad Air has that in the top button. So
Like you'd still have the fingerprint scanner.
Yeah, I think the next update for the iPad Mini has to be to make it basically a mini Air.
Hear it? Hear that, Apple?
Yes.
Mini Air.
It must be. Let's do it, Apple.
Flat
And
sides.
the new iPad needs done as well. Like, there's no room for two iPads with two different designs, and
with
2021.
two different pencils. The time has come
Oh,
to get rid of the first generation pencil.
Hey, at least it wasn't three different pencils. That was on the cards for a
Oh
while earlier.
my
Yeah.
God.
Please no.
I would hope that a third generation pencil would charge in pair like the second generation pencil, because that is vastly superior, and
Not
thus
stuck
would
in
work
lightning.
with and thus would work with existing iPads that also work with the pencil too. Let's not make any mistakes there, Apple. Let's not. Yeah.
That's a funny one, actually, is that with all the love that iPhone's been getting and everything about Apple Silicon, is maybe has the iPad fallen like a little bit by the wayside? Do you think? Is it
Not the iPad Pro?
Oh no, not the iPad, but like the regular iPad Pro that most people probably buy. Doesn't feel like it's a very exciting prospect.
I think that the regular iPad is kind of like the iPhone SE. It's not supposed to be the exciting one. It's the one for people who walk in a store and they're like, "Oh, I just want an iPad. Like, I don't want any bells and whistles. Like, just an iPad that is easy to use."
Got,
I need to replace mine. It's 10 years old.
Yeah.
So
Karen and I both know there are a lot of people who come into the Apple store and just say, like, I need this, but I want the cheapest one, like no frills. So.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many people literally came in and said, "I don't want any bells and whistles," meaning they want the cheapest one.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you got to remember about the iPad is, 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, when they first went on sale, the only options you had for iPad is what size storage do you want, and do you want cellular? There was only one iPad. There was just the one. And then we went mini, and then we lost the regular iPad for a while to the iPad Air, and then it's all just been, it's gotten a little mashed up. And then when the regular iPad name came back, it was for the entry-level model. So,
which I believe is Apple's most popular tablet.
Probably
because it's cheap.
Yeah.
It doesn't have bells and whistles.
No bells, not a single whistle in sight. It's obviously the most popular Apple products are going to be the less expensive ones, because people want that sort of Apple design without the huge
only
ecosystem
without the
look at AirTags.
Frankly, the one I'm surprised is still in the lineup is the Air, not the regular iPad. I know there's a big audience for a regular iPad that's cheap. And I know there's always going to be, Apple nerds that want the high end, pro performance. It's the Air that's kind of the weird one. Like, what's the audience for that?
No, the Air's electric. That's my favorite.
What?
All that chip and the new design.
Yeah.
To me, the Air is like it's that line in one of my favorite movies, Shawshank Redemption. If you've come this far, maybe you're willing to go a little further.
Well, right. Exactly. That's why I don't understand why the Air exists.
Yeah. But yeah, like if you've gone so far as to shell out the I guess the $399 or the $429 for 64 gigabytes or 128 gigabytes on the iPad, on the standard iPad, maybe go a little bit further for half as much storage on an iPad Air.
Well, see, I'm thinking if you're already decided you don't want the lower end and you're willing to pay for the Air, why not pay just that little bit more and go for the Pro?
Yeah, and well, the big question there, I think, because the Pro starts at 128 gigabytes of storage, and the Air, you have two options. You have 64 or 128, and I think it's an excellent point, Karen. That 64 these days. I mean, if you're just going to stream a lot of stuff, and if you want the best iPad for streaming stuff on the go, it's probably the iPad Air, and it isn't the 11-inch iPad Pro. So that's a theoretically compelling point, because you can just get away with the 64 gigabyte model. But if you're going to do any sort of work, like if I was thinking about if I didn't have a Pro iPad budget, but I wanted something more powerful, I would consider the Air. But once I get into actual usable levels of storage on the Air with 256 gigabytes, at that point, I might consider getting the Pro. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, I come from I come from working at an Apple store, and our job was to help match people with the right technology for them. And I think, like, I know who I'm selling the iPad mini to. I know who I'm selling the regular iPad to. I know who I'm selling the iPad Pro to. I don't know who I would sell the iPad Air to, unless somebody literally came in and said, I want an iPad Air.
I have $500 to spend on a tablet.
Great. See, that's the thing.
This is my budget. That's it. Not a penny more.
You can have this and a cheeseburger, and you're good.
Well, that's the thing. Last year when they debuted the iPad Air 4, they raised the price $100.
A lot.
The entry price is $100.
So what's the difference in price between the 128 gig iPad Air and 128 gig?
Well, there isn't 120. There's no 128 gig iPad Air. You have
64 and 256.
Oh, okay.
And it's, I think, I think it's $200. It's $200 between 64 gigabytes on the iPad Air and 128 on the iPad Pro.
Okay, but what's the difference in price between the 256 on the iPad Air versus the 128 on the iPad Pro?
I want to say it's $100. I think that's
So for $100, if storage isn't your main concern, you'll get that much more computing power.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
The computing power of the M1. Yeah,
it's not even that. The iPad Air. Sorry, these are British prices, but I think the point stands. The iPad Air, the 256, is £729, whereas the iPad Pro starts at $749.
Yeah.
So it's like what, a $20-$30 difference?
So yeah, that's the thing. It is from the 256 gigabyte Air to the 128 gigabyte 11-inch Pro, it's a $50 difference.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So if somebody comes in and they're looking to spend around that amount, I'm going to tell them, stop storing so much stuff on your iPad and go for the more computing power. Yeah, it would have to be like a very narrow, specific audience that really needs the Air.
What I wonder is if Apple was trying. I honestly wonder if Apple is trying to get the Liquid Retina XDR display into the 11-inch Pro as well, because one of the things that did is it bumped the price of the 12.9-inch model by $100, and I wonder if it would have done the same for the 11. I think what I wonder if Apple might feel the freedom to do in the future is start the Pro line at a higher overall price, because they haven't yet. They haven't raised the overall line entry price.
It's already so expensive, isn't it?
Yes, they are, because they are essentially Macs in tablet form with running iPadOS instead of macOS, which they should never do. They should never run macOS, and that is the official editor-in-chief of iMore position.
I think it's the official Apple position, to be quite honest with you. So I think you're in the
Yeah, I just that take always bothers me. It makes my tongue itch.
Grinds your gears.
It's like that's a lack of imagination right there. So yeah, we talked more. I think we talked more about fewer rumors than I had originally thought we would, but they're very juicy rumors. Next week, maybe next week we'll have an even juicier crop, because it'll be right before WWDC.
The rumors are going to be like crazy.
Hey, we might actually have like a leak or something by then.
We'll have the full
photos.
Deck. Yeah, we'll have Apple's full presentation deck.
John Prosser shared.
Oh my gosh! Can you imagine if their deck got out?
keynote video of Android 15, Android 12.
Yeah.
So
I remember.
John, we're all counting on you. Go on.
I remember years ago, someone purported to have a video of Apple practicing its keynote presentation, like in, I think it was the Moscone West, back when they were still in San Francisco for Dub. The full presentation of like iOS 11 or 12 or something like that, and it wasn't good because the very concept of them doing that was that early was just not. It didn't fit.
No.
Yeah. Next week, maybe Apple's deck. Who knows?
Is next week like a WWDC preview show? Is that what the?
I guess that would be the WWDC.
Unless something
preview
outrageous happens between now and then, obviously. But
yeah. All right.
I know, we could always get some press released products between now and then.
The the second phase of the Apple lossless thing. Oh, by the way, we're updating AirPods. They'll all support full 24-bit, 129.
Yeah, we didn't even get to the AirPods rumors.
Oh yeah, rumored AirPods. That's oh my god.
Rumored AirPods Pro. There's
new AirPods Max colors.
Big the big news there, I think, for a lot of people is that the new AirPods Pro are supposedly coming in 2022 now.
Yeah, that's a long time because they were released like the first quarter of this year.
But new colors sooner, right?
That's for the AirPods Max. Yeah.
Oh, the AirPods Max. Yeah.
So they're apparently not a sequel to AirPods Max.
Yeah, in between now and then, though, we probably have Beats Studio Buds
next month.
Which have been
we have photos of those.
Which have been leaked up and down all across the country. Thank you, LeBron James.
How does LeBron have a pair? Like,
because he's LeBron James.
But he's the king.
So do they mean to do that? Or
he's the king of America.
Is he?
They probably said they're under embargo. They probably told him they're under embargo, and he's like,
he didn't care.
There's always someone, isn't there? So it might as well be LeBron.
If you're LeBron James, would you care?
No.
I wouldn't.
What are they going to do to him? It's LeBron James.
Yeah. All right. We've come down to the end of our hour. I want to thank you, Stephen, for being on again this week. Really appreciate it. Always good to have you. I want to thank our live audience and the people who occupy the comment section. It's always very fun to read what you have to say to us during our show. Big thanks to everyone who's going to listen later in their podcatcher of choice. And as always, huge thanks to Jim Metzendorf, our editor extraordinaire, who always makes us sound so wonderful. Until next time, this has been the iMore Show, and just 1 week and change till dub, everybody. Bye.
Bye.